Good evening, Little Rock. This is Mike Poor, your superintendent. We're pleased that all of you can join us this evening. We know that this is just the start of many conversations that will get to happen over the course of the next month and really fall behind conversations that have occurred over the past several years, going clear back to when I arrived almost 6 years ago. We are grateful that we have an opportunity to engage you as a public. Please know that our Board of Education is on this Zoom, or they're watching from their YouTube, or there have been several board members that have shared that they will plan to watch this tomorrow when they are freed up and have time. So the board members will be engaged on all of our meetings in some form or fashion. And so we're pleased that they will be engaged. We're pleased that you're engaged tonight. And we hope that this meeting tonight ends up being one that brings value to you in terms of creating a depth of some information that have been put together by the district, but also to give you a vehicle where your voice can be heard in multiple channels, which will be shared in just a minute. So as we go and have the first slide, and I'll have Ms. Smith go ahead and move me to the next slide. The power of us, is it's a concept of trying to work together to try to always make our district better, to try to always be in a situation where we as a school district are evolving. And sometimes that means getting to do some things that are very proactive and fun. There's some other things that get done that are a little bit on the reactive side. And my guess is that many of you will look at this in particular as something that we have to react to. Our blueprint and right sizing is something that we have been talking about for a long period of time. This is not something that should really come as a shock that we're coming forward with this level of engagement. In fact, I can remember back in my first year when we were talking about two schools that were our designated focus topics tonight of Booker and Carver in my first year, and saying we need to do something with those schools. We backed off at that time, but we're now back to it 6 years later, 5 years later, and talking about the possibility of combining those schools. That's the focus for tonight, but it's a much bigger thing that we're talking about. In all of our efforts, we hope that we're being very transparent and making sure that we're providing you information. The blueprint that was really used as a formation of a communication and as an action plan really was something that we started to talk about more than 3 years ago. And some of you probably still remember that wild diagram of all the different moving parts. Many of those things have been executed right now. The development of J-Fair is a classic example of what the blueprint represented, where we did shrink in size and we moved Dodd and we moved Romine K-5 students to the J-Fair, and we also moved Henderson students. It decreased our footprint, and we actually believe that we've created a really good option in the blueprint that came out as J-Fair. We also did a variety of other things that tried to work with enhancement of Hall and the work at West School of Innovation. All those things became a part of the blueprint, and the blueprint continues on, and it is something that really our community needs to continue to think about each and every year of what we might need to do to support students and also be wise users of the taxpayers' resource and dollars. The recommendation that we're going to present tonight and over the next several nights of engagement, we believe do create benefit to our district, to our students, to our staff. It's a benefit in terms of educational delivery, and we also will share that it's a financial benefit. So going just to create a view of what's going to happen over the next several weeks, Ms. Smith, if you'll change the slide, we'll begin to share what we're doing to try to engage all of you in a calendar of events. So Ms. Smith, if you'll move the slide, please. Maybe, there we go, thank you. The calendar of events, there are 3 focus meetings, this being the first, that all have kind of a similar feel, but each has a different focus. Tonight's focus is about specifically talking about the Booker Carver combo. Second meeting will be on February 1st in the same format, and the focus will be on Meadow Cliff and Baseline as a recommendation to move those schools and have those students into a different spot in the district. On February 3rd, the focus will be on Western Hills, and the concept there for Western Hills is to make it the home of Ignite. And at the February 3rd meeting, we also would use it as kind of a part B of also talking about some pre-K movements and adjustments that we think would be beneficial to the school district. All three meetings will have some similarity in terms of the framework of the meeting, but all three meetings will also be individualized to talk about that region of our school district. Obviously, we'd love to have you join and share your opinions at all three meetings, but you may just want to focus on one of those meetings as they come towards you that most impact you and your family. We've also created some opportunities for in-person comments, and we know that the board is receptive to that, sought that, asked for that, and we have set up a meeting on February 8th that will be in the evening at Little Rock Southwest High, and those are simply just all live community input. The board is simply listening to you, much like they do on public comments on their regular board meeting. February 10th is an agenda meeting for the board. This will be a topic. That's not a meeting where public comment comes in, but it will allow the board to be able to talk and interact and ask questions and dive deeper into these proposals before they have to consider this as a potential action item on February 24th. Now, one thing that you see on the screen, and it's going to be an ongoing look, is that you see a QR code that is made available for you. The QR code is a tool that allows you to engage and provide feedback to the board in kind of a variety of different ways. All that feedback that you'll access on the QR code will ultimately be made public to everyone, and also obviously the board will get to see that. And I am going to come back to that QR code in just a minute to share more about all the different levels of engagement that can happen. Before I do that, though, I do want to set the stage for the recommendations of why we're coming forward with these ideas. The first thing that I want to share is that the blueprint of right sizing right now, we do believe brings value. Again, value to our students first and foremost. It also brings value to our educators. And we also believe it brings value to some of our bottom line things that ultimately come back out towards those same groups of people. Ms. Smith, if you'll go back, there we go. So we have a belief that if we move forward on these recommendations, they will ultimately enhance our educational delivery. It enhances our educational delivery in the sense that we know that when we have more staff working together and they're able to collaborate, that's a benefit. Now, that's not just a Mike Poor thing. That's not just a Little Rock School District thing. That is a national data-driven decision-making tool that says that if you have 4 or 5 teachers working collaboratively within a grade level, that creates higher levels of opportunity for achievement for students, to create better levels of support for students, and to create support for those educators. And so that's one of the things that's driving us, is to be able to be more collaborative. And that's something that this district has been working on since I've arrived. And really over the last 2 years, it's been critical. And it's been a key element in terms of the district getting out of level 5 to show that we are moving forward on collaborative approaches. We also know that when your school size is small, it lends itself to key personnel not being as available as when you have a school that's larger. A classic example would be sharing of nurses, sharing of counselors, just to give 2 positions, that when the school is a smaller size, there's less of those key personnel that most people would find to be a big benefit. You want to have a full-time counselor at each campus. That currently does not happen with some of our schools that are smaller. When you look at this set of recommendations and we dive deeper into this, it's also about using our resources effectively. Simply put, If you have a school that's less than 300, it costs more. And you're actually going to see a document that helps quantify the cost of every one of our campuses that are from the largest campus at Central High and Southwest down to our smallest schools at some of the elementary levels. We also know that if we are more efficient with our resources, it creates operational efficiency with our staffing on both the certified and the classified staffing aspect. So that's a positive about the recommendations that we have coming forward. That's what's driving us. We also want to share, as we move forward into some of the more detailed parts of this, that the pledge that I make to all of you is that no employee will lose their job if these recommendations are approved. So, there have been a variety of different things that have happened during my 6 years of how employees have been treated as we closed facilities. Probably the most dramatic that many employees might remember was with Fair, Hall, and McClellan, and those employees all had to apply to win a job to stay. Now, truth be told, there was probably around 40 to 50 people at most who ended up not getting rehired. But in this scenario, that will not be the case. Every employee, we're saying, will be assured a position in the school district for next year. Next, I want to say something about, if not now, when. Now, when I brought this home to my own family and said, here's what's coming up for me this week, they're like, why are you doing this right now? Why would you want to do this? Well, I got to tell you, I don't want to lay a problem, something that's not been solved, on the next superintendent. I don't want to leave our board in that shape either. I think that it's our responsibility to act in a timely manner on issues that confront us, on trying to improve our educational delivery, and also use our resources effectively. And no, I'm not necessarily looking forward to this, to be totally honest with you, because this is tough stuff. I get the fact that school environments are special, but we also know that and believe that when you think about changing school environments, that if we work collaboratively together, we can create an environment that parents and students are going to be welcomed and receptive to. A really good example of that would be Stevens. Franklin Elementary closed. There were a lot of people that were not happy about that, but I will share that the families that came towards Stevens and found that as their home were very happy with that site. So if we go to the next slide, I want to now share some of the ways that you're going to be able to interact, because this is interactive. It's not going to just be about Mike Poor talking. So you can see on bullet number 1 and bullet number 5 on public input, those are really kind of the same things, but we want to make sure that everybody hears that even tonight, you can shoot questions to that email address. Ms. Smith is monitoring that email address, and we're going to tackle some of those questions. Guess what? Even before the show started tonight, we actually had input coming in from questions. So we welcome questions right now. We're going to try to answer as many of those questions as we can during the time allotted. If we don't get those questions addressed, of course, it will go into a FAQ document that you can kind of see below. There are tools that can be accessed at any time. Know also that you can provide direct communication to our board, written communication. Many of you do that already. You email our board. Some of you do those to individual board members, some do it to all. And of course, our board members always appreciate feedback that they receive. Please also know that you can speak directly to the board. I've already shared this. February 8th is a public meeting at Southwest High. And then the potential action item for this is February 24th at that board meeting. Of course, any board meeting that's a regular board meeting has public comment. So you will be able to access that. Now, the QR code that you see below, again, it allows you a different level of being able to engage right now with being able to go in and look at it from an opportunity to provide information tonight on some brainstorming things. What are some of the positive things about the proposal? What are some of the negative things or minus? What are some of the interesting things? Sometimes interesting topics are things that are making you think and making you wonder. And those things in particular sometimes really can help make an idea flourish and get better, or it might even make someone say, this interesting thing makes it so that maybe it's not as attractive. So plus and minus sometimes are very obvious. Interesting is a different way to think, a little bit out of the box. And of course, we also want you to provide input to say, if we did this idea, here's what I think could make it really work with some sort of enhancement. Here's something else that I think the district should consider. So those tools of being able to communicate with us on the plus minus interesting, you also have a slot where you can just write in your comments and those will be fed to our board. That can all happen if you just click on to the QR code. You can also find this on our website to get additional information. There are tools that are going to be available to access. Typically, what happens in a process like that is that the tools will be enhanced as the conversation goes on. So they are dynamic tools for the most part. The first one is a facility planning working document. When you open it up, it's a very legal size, it's a legal size piece of paper, and it shows everything about enrollment trends to the status of the facility in terms of its health, you know, how old the building is, how much challenges it has at that given site. It also provides information about how much money is being spent at that school per student, along with a host of other information. It is a document that is not just new to the district this year. It's a tool that we use since my first year here, and you'll be able to look at it. It's updated. And in reality, you could also go back and look at that facility planning document over a span of time by going into the website. We do have FAQs that we've prepared, and they give you some very basic information. We believe that some of the questions that will come into us tonight will also become then packaged into our FAQs. And then finally, there was a staff brainstorming product that the board actually got to look at in December that was conducted in November and December with our school staffs of all the impacted schools. And so that tool is available to access and look at and gain additional information. If you go to the next slide, we'll start to talk a little bit about the Booker-Carver combination and the strengths of this proposal. Well, probably the number one thing about this proposal, and if you look at the two schools in terms of its size, it does the things that we've talked about in terms of right sizing that makes sense. When you right size, it enhances collaboration, it creates the key personnel to be at the building, and of course it creates staff efficiencies. If you look at these two buildings in terms of its enrollment pattern and trend, and again, all you have to do is kind of look at the trend data by going towards the facility planning working document, you start to see and understand a little bit about the history of the schools and the numbers decreasing at those campuses. Now, some of that decrease in size at those campuses, please understand that if you look at the census data and the most recent Metro Trends magazine, you will see that the eastern half of our city has lost a tremendous amount of population over the last 10 years. Again, this should not come as a total surprise that we have some challenges, because it's not just it's not something that you can just say this should be blamed on charter schools. This is a loss of students that could even attend in that area that's happened over a 10-year span. The strength of this proposal is bringing two magnet schools together, and both magnet schools have their own identity right now, but we believe that if they were to be combined, you would move towards what would be called more of a STEAM delivery. Many people hear STEM delivery, science, technology, engineering, math. STEAM, the A gets added in, and now you have arts as well. And what that does is it creates a more, I guess I would say, complete educational delivery, meets students' needs in a more aggressive way. We actually think that the work between these two magnets coming together would be dynamic, and there would be involvement of the staffs to help generate what that looks like. We would, of course, get community partners involved, and we would also get students involved. Another consideration to look at this as a strength is it actually helps the feeder patterns, which we're always sensitive to go towards Horace Mann and to Parkview, because the educational delivery would be consistent amongst those three, and it would now be three schools. So the educational delivery of moving to one elementary STEAM magnet to the Horace Mann Magnet to Parkview could be a powerful option for families that lets them see the pattern and the principles and everyone that they get to work with. Another factor that you may not be aware of is that the Booker campus, and this is a part of our proposal as to why we chose Carver, Booker is not on land that we own. Okay, so that is something that was an agreement that was created, generated, developed over 30 years ago. We do own the building. Okay, so the building is ours, but the land that it sits on is not. So obviously we would have to work with the city. We do have a lease that carries through for at least next year on that Booker campus. Challenges to the proposal. If we go to the next slide. The challenges that are identified, and obviously you all can contribute to these plus and minuses by using the tools that we've made available on the QR code. But Ms. Smith, if you'll go to the challenges are, first off, Booker campus. We need to be honest, it does have some real advantages in the fact that it does have a gym and it does have an outdoor track and football field. And so that is one of the things that really separates the Booker campus from the Carver campus. The two magnet schools do have their own identity. And of course, anytime you're bringing two entities together and saying, well, you're going to bring them together and you're going to make it better. Of course, I believe that can happen, but it's going to cause some adjustments and some give and take. And those things aren't necessarily easy, especially when you have staff that are so committed in both of these schools to their educational delivery. But I believe in people. I believe that they can come together, but we want to be real that is something that could be a potential challenge. Next, it has to be known that some of the staff from either one of these campuses may not be a part of the magnet option due to staffing formula based on enrollment. So we have to staff that building at its enrollment. If you staff it at enrollment, then we're not going to just be able to combine the two staffs and say, okay, we're good to go. There will have to be some give and take, and the numbers will play out based upon enrollment, which is really, the enrollment and staffing is built on a state formula where you try to get to your staffing. So the ideal thing would be that you would have every one of your classes having well over 22 kids in the class. It's never neat at the elementary level exactly that you can say, oh, we want 25, but you try to arrange it so that all those classes would be above 22 students. Next is that we want to go to moving towards some of the things that are the questions that you all might have as we just stop right now and bring up some of the questions that have come forward. Ms. Smith, do you want to unmute and be able to share some questions that have come up? And please note that, again, if you want to email questions that we can then respond to, and I do have all my staff that are engaged in this activity on tonight, so I may call on one or two of them to help with the response. And if we don't know an answer, we will certainly say we don't know and we're going to have to look into it. So Ms. Smith, would you start us off with some of the questions?
Good evening. I hope that you can understand and hear me okay. Can you?
I hear you very clear myself.
Okay. The first question, actually, we have two questions from the same parent who is also a teacher. He would like to know, why was this format chosen as opposed to offering the normal up to 3-minute opportunity to speak? It seems cold and impersonal to have you read questions and respond to content without hearing the author's voice. Was Zoom considered to let people speak for themselves? As administrator, moderator, you can mute all that you like. And that is from Chris Henry.
Well, Mr. or Miss Henry, I'm not sure which one that is. Thank you for your comment. And so first off, I hope that as the program pushed out, that you saw that there are multiple opportunities where you can actually be in person. And those opportunities would be on February 10th, and then again on February 24th, where you can directly access and speak to the board that would come through Zoom. We also know that, kind of an efficient way right now of just trying to handle it and only having, a way to capture. We didn't know how many people are going to be on this. So typically when we do Zoom questions with the board, those are all predetermined. We had no way to really predetermine who would want to talk and ask questions. We wanted to make sure we answer as many as we can. And that's why the bulk of the time tonight is set up to respond to questions such as yours. And we hope that you will follow up if you want to speak in person to come again to February 10th at Southwest, or you can also put in to speak at the board meeting on February 24th. Ms. Smith, next question.
The next comment is from Mr. Henry also, and he says, in one of the district's provided documents, it says that the year built or latest renovation is 1988 for both Booker and Carver. Within the last 5 years, Booker has been repainted, installed a new gym floor, and replaced most, if not all, flooring. So that is flat out untrue. And we've been asking for new windows forever. I think as long as I've been there, 12 years.
Thank you, Mr. Henry. And I may have Mr. Yardberry help me with this. But when we talk about a renovation, we're really using more or less the state definition. So enhancements of the school, such as improving the restroom facilities, renovating or replacing the floor, don't necessarily fall into what would be labeled as a major renovation. He is also right that Booker has advocated for window replacement, and that would be something that, let's say that this thing flipped and people said we were going to go stay at Booker, we would have to work on the windows because it is a major weakness of that facility right now. We did enhance, as another example, at Booker for safety reasons, some of the entryways into that campus. But those things do not fall as major renovations. Mr. Yardberry, do you have anything you'd like to add to my comment?
Yes, sir. Just to build on that, thank you. We did do some floor replacements on the campus. That is true. We did not do all of them. There is a pretty significant cost as it relates to that campus because there is quite a bit of asbestos abatement that still has to take place. So that's been one of those things that we've been trying to phase in as we can and work around summer programs and things like that. So, but I would agree with your comment about we don't really, that really by definition, it doesn't speak to a renovation, so to speak, more or less just trying to keep up with some maintenance items.
And Mr. Yardberry, just for anyone listening, if you don't know, is our Director of Facilities. Ms. Smith, another question?
Yes, sir. From Mariah Riscano about teachers' job placement process. I understand that teachers at the closing schools have been promised a job somewhere in the district next year. What process will be used to determine what position a teacher from a closed building will have?
Thank you for that question. And it is a question that always comes up as you go through this. And I guess one side can say, well, we've actually got pretty good at handling this responsibility with our HR department and our principals. And so we work with the Teachers Association and our PPC. We always have combined to talk about how to handle these things. Those come in with direct communication once the decision's made by the board. If the board decides to make one of these recommendations come true, and we do end up having a modification, then we immediately come to that campus, and the campus has the teacher association there, the reps from both the LREA as well as the AFTA group. We also then have our HR team and myself and Dr. McGee and Mr. Smith. We all show up at that campus and we talk to them about what the process is going to be. We have been really effective at handling those kind of things. The most recent example of that would again be the movement that we had last year when we had Romine, Dodd, and Henderson have to shift towards FAIR. Not all those people were guaranteed to come to FAIR. And so many other people had to be find other spots, and we worked that all out. And we really had that problem solved, I think in early June for the most part, with maybe exception of 1 or 2 staff. So it's kind of unfortunate, but we're actually used to this process. We're pretty good at it, and we work with staff, and we have not had any major beefs or gripes about how we've handled that in the past. And I think we'll do it well again right now.
Here is an additional question from Ms. Riscano as well. She would like to know, I know where Booker is because I can see it from the freeway, but where is Carver? As student enrollment has been / is dropping, what has been / is being done to promote these programs and recruit students to these schools?
Thank you. And I think one of the suggestions that our team could take from this, and I know we have an individual here by the name of Katie Elliott that's kind of capturing some of our takeaways. One takeaway is we can for sure make sure that there's a district map that's tied to this that really kind of makes these spots highlighted so it's easy to see. So we'll add that on as one of the things that people can see, so they can definitely see the locations of all the campuses. So that's a good suggestion. The other thing is that, one of the things that we try to do in terms of promotion, we've done a variety of things over this span of times, and I will share. And Ms. Smith, you may want to help complement this answer, and Dr. Fields might as well. We, and Mr. Smith has helped too, we have tried all sorts of things to push out the magnet option. The magnet option is not just at Carver or Booker. We have Gibbs, we have Forest Heights. We have magnets in quite a few places in our school district. We have had magnet fairs. This year we did not because of COVID, but we have had magnet fairs in the past. We have done all sorts of promotion, both from the district level and from those school sites of trying to get out and promote. Unfortunately, we have not, and again, a part of that probably is just a factor of, on that side of the city, the number of students that are really available to come into, I'm telling you, into our setting, a private school setting, a charter school setting. Those numbers have shrunk dramatically on the eastern part of our city. Ms. Smith, would you like to add anything, or Dr. Fields, to that response?
I would just say that we have attempted to do quite a bit of promotions through not only our social media and website channels, but through print publications, radio ads, all of the traditional media partners, as well as social media. And then the schools have actually been pretty good about helping to promote as well. And we've tried to support those efforts.
Dr. Fields, anything to add? And then I may ask Mr. Smith to see if he has anything to respond on that one.
No, I think Ms. Smith and both of you covered it.
Mr. Smith, anything to add on this one?
No, sir.
Okay.
Mr. Poor, can I chime in on that as well?
Yes, Mr. Bailey, thank you.
So, and I'm Kelsey Bailey, the Chief Deputy Financial and Operation Officer. So one of the things that some of our patrons may forget that Gibbs and Carver were both stipulated magnet schools, which were part of our DSEG. At one time, we actually had enrollment from North Rock and Pulaski County that attended these schools. So when those kids matriculated out, when we started talking about the wind down, we knew we may have to make some tough decisions one day due to enrollment decreasing, and we're at that point now. So the schools are, half the population actually came from North Little Rock and Pulaski County prior to the wind down that we actually had with the state. So that's something that a lot of people don't remember, or may not remember, or may not be aware of. So
Okay, are you ready for the next question?
Oops, Mr. Bailey was just finishing up, Ms. Smith.
Okay.
that's it.
Okay, Ms. Smith, go ahead.
I do apologize. Mr. Bailey's audio was a little low on my end, so I did not mean to interrupt. This question now is from Kevin Cooney, and he would like to address teacher shortages. Could you please let us know what will be done about the teacher shortages in the school? Some teachers are still sick. My daughter wears her mask daily while in school, but if teachers and students are still coming to school sick, we are defeating the purpose of wearing masks. It appears that the Little Rock School Board doesn't want to do virtual, but I can't sit back and worry about my child catching COVID again. Please let the parents know what will be done. Thank you.
Thank you. And I'm going to take that question in two different ways. So I'm going to first off try to gear it towards the discussion we're having tonight about teacher shortage. But then I also want to go ahead and honor the question that's come in just about COVID. So the thing that I would share with you is on teacher shortage. One of the things that actually helps us with this in terms of efficiency and why I have such a high level of confidence that every staff member can be placed is that we are, it is getting tougher and tougher to find people that want to jump into the education profession. So as we shrink a little bit, it actually helps us with the overall staffing of the district. It actually helps us, example on SPED, you know, when you combine these two schools, you have a smarter delivery on staff efficiency, potentially with SPED personnel. On the view of where we're at as a district in terms of COVID and how we've handled virtual learning, you know, one of the things that, again, today, our number of positive cases dropped. This is about a 4 or 5 day trend of having less positives. Our quarantine numbers are going up just a tad. So today, I believe the quarantine was at 168 on quarantines. So we have moved schools to virtual whenever we have felt like we have a large number of people that are going through COVID protocols or that are having to call out sick. And we've been pretty liberal on that, probably more liberal than any other school district. I will also share, again, we're the second largest school district, but if you go look at the cases of how many people are positive within our school system, right now, we're somewhere around 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 in the entire state. So even though we're the second largest, the number of cases that we have are far less than other sites. And I really attribute that to everyone, parents, students, staff, really doing the right things with masking, staying home when they're sick, air ventilation systems that we put in, and of course, people getting vaccinated, which is the most critical component of keeping everyone safe. I appreciate your question. I didn't catch your last name, Kevin, but thank you, Kevin.
That was Mr. Kevin Cooney. Our next question is from Jennifer White. She says, my comments for the upcoming proposals are more in the question form. Why is an outgoing superintendent pushing this through, changing up the zone maps, closing schools, moving pre-Ks from communities? Shouldn't this be done with new leadership? And I will ask you her second question after you've responded to that one, Mr. Poore.
Yeah, and you may have asked me covering that in the beginning. And, you know, I guess you could have shoved this off and said, I'll let the new guy do it. But, you know, these type of things, to be frank with you, are not easy for anybody. And when a new superintendent has to come in and immediately tackle staffing inefficiencies in buildings, that doesn't do that person any justice, and it quickly ruins whatever honeymoon they have in terms of coming into the district. This is a problem that has been identified clear back even before I came in as a superintendent in terms of the number of schools that needed to be closed. And if you look into this and ask people that have been really in places where decision-making was churning, the number of schools that could have been closed even when I first arrived could have been greatly enhanced. We tried to take a little more cautious approach. We've tried to be aware of doing these things over a span of time to try to do it when we most need to. The reality is we need to right now. We've got to make some adjustments in order for us to, again, I'm still saying this is going to be of education benefit, but of course it's going to be of help to us on the financial end.
The second part of Ms. Jennifer White's question is, why are we even thinking about removing pre-K access from certain areas of our city? The Stevens pre-K is a hub for that community. Many families don't have the luxury of transportation to any other school since pre-K cannot be bused. Many of the families have siblings, which would mean the parents would have to go to 2 different locations to pick up children. How can the city promote a community school when the district is removing educational access from the community? Many of the teachers also brought their children there. I wonder how many parents just won't send the 3 and 4-year-olds to school at all now if this passes. Food for thought. Sincerely, Jennifer White.
Well, Mrs. White, it's a good way to finish it. Food for thought. I want to first off, obviously your comments will be captured and put in, and you can add into our document to use the QR code to enhance or add on to the comments you just made. Some of those comments actually took place in our board meeting when this was discussed in December as well. So we have board members that also have some of those same questions and concerns. And that's why your input tonight and in the upcoming meetings, whether it's in written format or coming to speak in person, are helpful. We are going to come in specifically on February 3rd to talk about the pre-K programs. And so if you tune in, it's going to have a little bit different delivery, going to have some of the same structure, but we will also be showing some of the specific numbers that generate at least the proposal from the administration. And so when you watch that next Thursday on the 3rd, you might have further comments. So please do come back and watch on the 3rd, stay engaged with us and keep asking your questions, and we appreciate you.
The next question or statement is from Misty, and I do not have a last name, but her question relates or statement relates to behavior class. My son is currently in the behavior class at Booker Arts Magnet. He has been in this low setting class since he was in kindergarten and is currently in the 2nd grade. He recently got diagnosed with ADHD and a few other things, and this class has helped him so much. This is the only school in the district that provides this class. Without it, he won't be able to get the help he truly needs. Booker currently has 2 teachers who are located right next to each other, and they are an absolute blessing. Taking this school away is stripping this kid or these kids of the proper help they could receive in this low class setting.
Well, there's so many things to respond, and I'll have Mr. Smith help me on this. But, first off, I want to just compliment what you said and enhance to say, the Booker staff that work in that type of setting are exceptional people. Of course, we want exceptional people working with our kids, and that type of delivery, we don't want that to go away. So, the movement of that program, Mr. Smith, do you have any specific comment on that?
Thank you, Mr. Ford. Yes, so when we look at the placement of those classes, and first I'd like to say thank you for the compliment that the teachers are doing an outstanding job with your student. But our expectation is that we have that same capability in all of our classrooms, our CBI classrooms, our behavioral classrooms, at all of our campuses that house those individual classrooms. But if the space is available, we do hope to have the opportunity to provide that as well at Carver and campus site. So those teachers will be a part of the move for us to accommodate those students as well.
And this might be a good time for me to also mention that our board members have asked and requested time to go and tour these 2 campuses. So they are doing their due diligence. And we've set up times for them to be able to go over and see those 2 campuses, to be able to look at the physical plans of both campuses, the strengths and weaknesses, which all schools have strengths and weaknesses as a physical plant. And that this would fit into that too, of understanding some of the special programs that each campus has and how those would play out. So those things are being considered, and we appreciate your time.
Mr. Poor, this question is from Terry Hughes, the Carver music teacher. She wants to know if you will be detailing the staffing formula specifically this evening.
No, we won't, because the key thing will be that this is a part of Dr. Field's efforts that once the decision's made, now we've got to go and make parents aware that, you know, this is kind of maybe a little bit different option. And they have to have the ability to say, I am in, I want to go towards this combo of Booker Carver, or that they can look at another option. When that happens, after the parents have that opportunity, then that helps us generate what the staffing needs to be at those campuses. Dr. Fields, anything to add on that one?
Oh, sir, I think you captured it.
Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Poor, this question now is from Amy Hallam regarding the Booker Carver combination questions. Question 1, at a previous board meeting, it was mentioned that the Booker campus will possibly be used to alleviate crowding at Central by moving the 9th graders to Booker site. If we don't own the land, but own the building, what is the justification for moving the elementary students out just to move high school students into the same building that needs attention? How does that help financially? Question 2,
Let me
if
do
there's
those by,
truly space available without having to build, renovate Carver in order to support the fine arts instruction available to Booker students, a cafeteria stage is not sufficient for our productions and performances to those who attend. That is Amy Hallam, former Booker parent and Booker staff member.
Okay, and you may need to come back. It helps if you do separate those two questions. So I'm going to do the first question and then have you reframe that second question for me, just so I answer it in a complete way. If I understood the first question, it was about, you know, one time it was you mentioned that maybe even Central could use that as a part of an option as they work on their construction project. Today, we actually worked with the Central staff and our administrative team to start the process of making an architect selection. When we make that selection of an architect, they're going to look at all the dynamics. But one of the #1 priorities we have with Central High is trying to keep the kids on the campus while the construction project's going on. The idea of some other option to move kids, that will kind of be a last resort. And it is not driving the reason why we're trying to look at combining Booker and Carver. Booker Carver is its own separate thing. But we also know it's our responsibility that once one of these campuses close or multiple campuses close in the district, we have an obligation also to try to reutilize that property in some form or fashion, whether it's for the district or that we end up trying to do something to maybe create a different use for the building. And so those are things that we are going to work on. But I hope that helps alleviate a little bit of that. It is nothing, it's not being driven by what we're thinking about doing at Central. This is truly being driven by the numbers that can be seen on the enrollments at Booker and Carver, and then trying to create a better educational delivery. The second question I know was dealing with something, Ms. Smith, about the fine arts capability, but could you repeat that part?
Yes, sir. Is there truly space available without having to build or renovate Carver in order to support the fine arts instruction available to Booker students? A cafeteria stage is not sufficient for our productions and performances or those who attend.
I'll begin with, we do know that there will have to be some adjustments that would need to be made at the Carver campus to help us keep with the fine arts options that are currently available at Booker. So we are aware of that. We do think that there are space where we can have an adequate place for students to do their performance. Mr. Smith, anything to add?
No, I just think that we do have to understand that there will be some adjustments that we will have to make to classrooms to accommodate the fine arts classes that will be coming from Booker. And also be mindful that Booker was once a middle school that had to be converted into what is currently the elementary magnet school. And there were adjustments made then too to accommodate the programming that's currently in place.
Thank you, Mr. Smith.
The next question is from Kimberly C. And her response #1 is yes to STEAM. The question is, why not wait to bring the two schools together? What's the rush? Why not build a school that will have the appropriate facilities for the arts first? You mentioned the sports facilities at Booker. It's the arts programs that bring people to the building at Booker, not sports. What would need to happen at this point, with all of the preparation the district has already done behind the scenes to make this combo happen, to be accomplished later, and to redirect your attention to something that supports the artistic education of elementary students in the district instead.
It's a really good comment, and I may not have done a good job of how I worded one of the advantages of the Booker campus is having a track and a gym. But those are things that are brought up on a regular basis, and I would have been better served if I would have said that the gym is the home for many of the home for the fine arts element. So I apologize for that, and that would have been that should have been something that I said. In terms of, I love that you love the STEAM idea. And of course, the STEAM idea, obviously a facility does make a difference, but also the people make a difference. And so, that's what I think is driving. We can get our people together. We can make this really a powerful delivery for an educational delivery to our community. I think that the whole thing of building a campus on that, we actually have a really good campus in Carver, okay? And I got to tell you, it is a quality campus in terms of its layout and its classroom environment and the age of the facility. So there are a lot of pluses to that campus, and we do know that we're going to have to make some adjustments to make the fine arts. I hope that I have a legacy or be looked at on down the line, that the fine arts has always been promoted as a part of what I've been doing with my team. We value that. We think it's critical for kids. We do more at the elementary level on fine arts probably than any other district in the state, is my guess. But we also know that Booker is special for fine arts. And that's where, by combining it with the Carver group, we actually think we can create a great feeding group towards MAN and then on to Parkview. So we're very excited about STEAM, and we think it can happen at the Carver campus.
Mr. Poor, her additional question or statement / question, if you will, I believe she is responding to some of the points made in the FAQ, but she expresses every class to have more than 22 students, ? All research points to the opposite direction, especially for children who are struggling academically.
Well, one of the things, and Mr. Smith, you may want to help me with this, or Dr. McGee may want to help as well. Call him in for the first time. But the research in terms of class size, I got to tell you, that's pretty much all over the place. And you can find research that says you go down to 14, that makes a difference. You can find research that says being at 18 or 14 has no impact at all. It's more about the instructional delivery that matters, and then the collaborative opportunity. One of the key elements of combining these two campuses is that you create a larger academic team with support mechanisms that can actually help with everything from grouping students to breakout of students. And that's where the magic of a little larger campus really can impact the achievement levels and the support to individual students. Mr. Smith, do you want to add anything, and then I'll let Dr. McGee round that topic off?
Yes, sir, Mr. Ford, you were headed right down the correct path. As you talked about earlier with the collaboration with teachers, when you have more teachers on a grade level, that's a greater support for teachers versus having one or two teachers on a grade level trying to plan by themselves or in small groups. So there is a lot to be said about having more collaboration on a team to support not only the instruction for the students, but also the teaching and learning for the teachers as well.
Thank you. And Dr. McGee had to drop off. He had an emergency come up, and so I apologize. He's not able to enhance that answer. Ms. Smith, go ahead for your next question.
The next question is from Maribel Ortiz. And she says, well, it's actually more of a statement. As far as I know, Booker is bigger than Carver. Oh, so here's the question. So why not move Carver into Booker?
We've looked at a variety of different things. And if you look at that document that we brought up early in the presentation, that's one of the tools in terms of the facility planning working document. Booker is a much older facility. You've heard that there is issues with asbestos that could be on that campus. We have windows that are challenging on that campus. There's some things that would really need to be invested in one of our oldest facilities, and Carver is a much newer facility. Anything to add to that, Mr. Yarberry or Mr. Bailey?
You captured in my same thoughts there as well. So Booker has many more needs, plus with the addition that you mentioned earlier, we don't actually own the land there. We're still going through renewal lease. We have a 1-year lease for this year. So
Yeah, I was just going to add too, Mr. Poor. I was actually trying to look that up to capture the square footage, but I really don't have that information right in front of me right now.
And Ms. Smith, as you asked the question, and maybe one of the team members could look this up on the master facility document, it will halfway be answered by what the capacity is. So if you look at that, if somebody can find that real fast and let me know when you've got it, we'll reinsert that additional information.
Okay,
Go ahead,
Mr.
Ms.
Poor,
Smith.
this question is from Latoya Morgan. And she would like to know if there's any type of data that can be provided to show the success of the previous schools within the district that have been successful with combining. And then who is going to make up the transition team?
Thank you. And I think that we do have some of that is kind of an ongoing thing. So for instance, the FAIR thing is so new that we don't really have any academic data that would separate it to say this has been an enhancement by this percent because it's a brand new school. And we'd have to wait a little bit for some of that state testing data to come in and also go through a whole year of our NWEA map testing to be able to see that. We do think that the situation at Stevens has shown that school has grown academically, and that's been positive. The effort when we moved Wilson and into Western Hills has also been, in my mind, successful as you look at kind of the span of time of not dramatic achievement level growth, but solid growth. Mr. Smith, anything to add to that?
You covered it, Mr. Poor.
Okay. Ms.
I'll
Smith, go
make
ahead.
one comment on that as well. So as we hopefully eventually get out the pandemic, one of the things we struggle with a lot in the district right now is actually finding support staff. That's custodial, child nutrition, transportation drivers. We struggle with nurses and actually teaching staff as well. So as more people have left the profession, so as we combine some of these sites, there's going to allow us to have the necessary coverage that we need. Our staff is being stretched out pretty thin. We actually did the Fannie Howard study back in, I believe it was probably getting close to 10 years ago now. So the school funding formula is based on a 500 count school. So we want to get as close as possible to that as well.
And I did find the information. I'm going to give my staff a bad time that I found it before you all did, and I'm on the Zoom and answering questions. But ironically, and this was information that was captured with a third party independent review to understand instructional capacity. So when you look at the capacity, it was done by a third party, and both of the schools are at 634 as their quote ideal capacity. When we say ideal, that means that it's functioning at its highest level in terms of its academic environment. You probably could use more space to squeeze in one place or another, but both campuses were at 634 as their ideal capacity. And just to put that into context, take it one step further to kind of enhance the point, is that the current enrollment at Booker right now, as of I believe the October count, is 238 students. And the current enrollment at Carver with its K-5 group is at, I believe, 175. And then it does have pre-K kids there as well.
Mr. Poor, I'm going to actually combine a couple of questions and you'll understand why. The first is from Ciola Dockery, and she wants to know, will there be room for the arts programs at Carver? And if not, will the arts programs be canceled? And that also ties into a question from another patron, Miss Sarah Stone, who says, will all specialty classes be continued no matter which site is chosen? For example, it's my understanding that Booker offers orchestra and dance classes. Carver offers specialty classes like science lab and young astronauts. If so, will parents be able to choose between the specialty areas of arts or math and science? Will it be more like a semester of PE and a semester of dance, a semester of regular core music and a semester of orchestra? As is, Carver has many specialty classes and our schedules are very full. Will our school day be extended? As is, I cannot imagine adding anything else to our current schedule. And that's Sarah Stone, who is a second grade teacher at Carver.
Thank you, Ms. Stone. And Mr. Smith may have to help complement my answer, but we probably can't say it enough that we want fine art. So any transition here, and I almost can guarantee our board would say the same thing. The fine arts is a critical element for this delivery of a magnet. We want a STEAM magnet, so science, technology, engineering, arts, and mathematics. We want that whole ball of wax. So each of these campuses do have some unique programs, and you brought up several, orchestra being one that's a part of the Booker group, and then also at Carver, there's some things that are unique, such as the I'm not saying the term right, probably the space science class. Mr. Smith, would you share a little bit how you see that playing out?
Yes, sir. So we have a very good example of how that potentially could play out, where students in kindergarten through second grade would have an opportunity to have exposure to all of the programming. And then by third grade, potentially selecting a focus area, which then would translate into them moving into middle school and high school. So there's a number of ways that we could approach that, where both are married together, but students still having the option of really defining which side that they would like to select at some point.
And that brings up a thing that, again, Mr. Smith and I could tag team on. I forgot one of the questions from probably the previous question was, how would the planning team be decided? And Mr. Smith, you've been a part of that. How do we generate this planning team? And this time I'll follow up to you.
Obviously, ideally, we would like the planning team to focus around the current two campuses, with both principals being a part of that, and members of their guiding coalition assisting with that, and also having parents as a part of that to help formulate what the final product would be. So
it will be inclusive, and and of course we don't want to get ahead of ourselves, but those things we have tackled before and been pretty successful.
Mr. Poor, this question is from Christopher Henry again, and it references an earlier comment about much newer. His question is, how much newer? Much newer means what?
I'm assuming he's referring to the age of the facility. And on that one of the things we could do to better address that, Mr. Henry, is we probably need to add a column onto our facility planning document that would say when that building was actually opened. And so we will add that on to our facility planning document. If Ms. Elliott, you can make that part of our thing. That would probably be valuable information. So thank you for bringing that up. We can help clarify that. Mr. Yarberry?
Yes, sir. I can probably help with that right now, actually. Booker, the age of that building, it was built in 1963, and Carver Elementary was built in 1989. And
Thank you very much.
I think I might, if I may expand a little bit on a previous question. I did a little bit of homework here, and Booker actually has 159 square feet per student, where Carver has 211 square feet per student. And that's available permanent building space.
Thank you. That's excellent information.
Here is another question from Ms. Mariah Riscano. She's saying, well, it's been stated repeatedly that Carver would need to be adjusted to accommodate the fine arts program. What would be the cost to remodel Carver to incorporate the arts program from Booker so that the students can participate in orchestra and band classes, rehearse in piano lab, dance on specialty treated flooring with a mirrored wall, a gym to participate in sports, and theater performances with curtain, sound, and lighting system? In turn, what would be the cost to remodel Booker to incorporate the STEM program of Carver? So let me repeat that last question. In turn, what would be the cost to remodel Booker to incorporate the STEM program at Carver?
Well, you're bringing up I understand the question, and I don't know if we have the answer for you tonight on that one, and I'll have to kind of go back into our queue to be able to respond in terms of an FAQ part of it. But the reality is that you've got two facilities that we can't continue to operate, in my opinion, both of them, and be anywhere near efficient, nor be as effective as we want to on the educational end. We think that we can make minimal adjustments at the Carver campus that would make it so that the fine arts program could thrive and be quality. Some of the things that you brought up, Mr. Smith himself has talked about, for instance, the dance studio, of what we would have to do to make that a part of the delivery at Carver. So those are things we're thinking about. Mr. Bailey, did you have something you wanted to add?
No, sir.
Okay, I'm sorry. I thought I saw you on mute. Ms. Smith, you have another question?
I do. This again is from Ms. Riscano. She says, if Booker is closed, will the community and other schools still have access to use of the track and playground area?
That would be because that part of the building, that part of the facility is more of a city owned aspect. So that one's not one we could answer directly right now.
And then a final question from her. She said, I noticed on Carver's minus list that they said there are not enough bathrooms for students and staff. Why would you put more people in a place without sufficient bathrooms?
Mr. Yarberry or Mr. Smith, do you want to tackle that one?
Well, I can say that the available restroom space in the building does meet the requirement for the building capacity as it was designed. Now, obviously, if we were to add square footage to the facility, that might change things a little bit. But I do believe that we are meeting the minimum requirements for restroom space available.
You also have to remember that in this particular option, that the pre-K students would be moving towards Rockefeller. So, there will be additional bathroom facilities in that area and additional classroom space.
And Mr.
Okay,
Moore,
our next, I'm sorry, Mr. Smith.
I'm sorry, if I may add, at one point, Carver did have an enrollment that was well over 500 students. If we just look at the numbers of Carver and Booker currently, that would still be within that range, and it did accommodate the restroom situation, accommodated those students at that time. But Carver was originally built to hold 950 students.
Thank you, Mr. Smith.
This question now from Miss Latoya Morgan. She wants to know about the Booker combination and asking if a survey can be created to ask parents and students what they need. How does the district plan to address the SEL component with combining the two schools?
Well, that kind of is a part of that transition team that another patron brought up, that we do use that to help look at what are some of the needs, what are some of the things that parents most want. So that would be an activity that would follow after this recommendation is complete. But we know that we can work together with everybody and make that we will be very sensitive to making sure all needs are taken care of for young people.
Another question now from Miss Sarah Stone. Will there be assistant principals?
That depends a little bit on what the ultimate enrollment number is at that campus. There is it's very close to being able to have that. Ms. Stone, if I remember right, is a second grade teacher at Carver, so she probably understands the value of what that would bring in terms of support to everybody on the building. Our basic formula is that you've got to for sure be somewhere above 450, close to 500 before we consider having an assistant principal on a campus. So when you combine the two numbers right now with just the October numbers of how many kids that would represent, the combined population, I'm doing very quick math, so I'm doing a ballpark number for you. It's about 440 students on that campus. So there would need to be some growth to get up closer to the 500 mark before an AP would be developed at that campus.
Our next question is from Mr. Christopher Henry. He is saying, if moving Carver students to Booker has been the best plan for right sizing at least 2 to 3 times, presumably because that has been the proposal to the board in the past, I would hope the LRSD wouldn't put forth their second, third, or seventh best plan, for example. Why isn't Carver students to Booker still the best plan?
Well, and all I can tell you is that this topic, in fact, that's how I initially met Ms. Adder, was through this topic, that Booker and Carver, this has gone back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, and it's not the easiest thing to determine what's the best site. We, as an administrative unit, do believe that the best facility for students on a number of areas to look at would be the Carver facility. And so that's our view of it in terms of a recommendation. Obviously, when this was discussed my first year, there was a lot of opinion going back and forth on that particular topic. And we ultimately said we were going to let both of them exist and hope that they would enhance the enrollments. And unfortunately, the enrollments have not materialized, partially because of what Mr. Bailey said. The MDM transfers came to an abrupt end. Partially, a bigger factor probably is the population on the east side of the city has dwindled pretty dramatically over the last decade.
Mr. Poor, I do believe that concludes our questions and comments for this evening.
Okay, so if you'll go to the next slide, Ms. Smith. The reason we bring up this next slide, it's actually a repeat of a previous slide. We just want to re-emphasize the opportunities. And so tonight, I have no idea how many people watched or how many people will watch after the fact. So this is always going to be available on our website. You will be able to go to the website and it will be so easy to click on to say, oops, I see what's going on and I want to see what's going on blueprint right sizing. Ms. Smith, do you want to share real quickly the access points that as soon as they click on the website that they're going to be able to see?
Sure. I would remind our stakeholders that we have been sending out information via Parent Link, which will reroute you to the Little Rock School District website. We have placed an alert on the front page or the landing page of the website that redirects you to these documents, as well as a banner. If you click on that banner, it's one of the sliding banners on the website. You'll be able to access the documents and information. And then if you look in the red section at the top of the website, there is still another place for you to click on the link. So we've tried to make it as obvious and convenient as possible for family members, community members, and staff to click on those links and be redirected directly to the actual documents that include the facilities planning working document, FAQs, and then we remind you also that you will have an opportunity to continue to provide input based on the dates that Mr. Poor shared earlier. And all of this information is listed on the website in our calendar, as well as a news article. So we're going to try to make sure that we communicate with you as many ways as we possibly can. And we also invite those of you who are watching, please, to help us share the word, because you have your own networks as well, and you can help us make sure that anyone who is interested in participating in this process knows about it first, and then we'll have an opportunity to do so. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Smith. And I just want to draw also attention back to the QR code, whether you use the QR code or go directly into the website. There are tools there that allow you to make physical written comment or a technology comment, whatever you want to word that, into the board. So you can put down, your opinion or thoughts, but you also have the opportunity. We really want to encourage use of the brainstorming tool of plus, minus, interesting, and enhancements, because I think that's where we're going to learn the most, and that also be the most beneficial for the board as they think about these recommendations. Please do that. Remember, we do have upcoming meetings next week on February 1st and February 3rd that will be meetings similar to this. The first will have an emphasis on Meadowcliff and baseline. The third is more about Western Hills and its movement to being possibly our home for the Ignite online school, but also talking about movement of pre-K students. So those are coming up. February 8th is the opportunity to speak directly to the board at Little Rock Southwest Campus. And then February 24th is our board meeting. Remember, the board members will be discussing this on February 10th in their agenda setting meeting as well. So we want to thank everybody. We want to thank our board for their engagement. There were some of them that were on the Zoom, some of them were watching like you all were tonight. And then there were some that had said that they couldn't watch tonight, they're going to be watching the tape relay of this, but it's being observed. People are listening to what you're sharing, and we most definitely appreciate all those that presented questions tonight and those of you who are engaged listening. We wish each of you a good rest of this evening and a good into your week. Thank you so much for being a part of this discussion.